Imagine the economy you live in is in decline, a recession. Now, how would you feel at first? That'd be two ways. Inflation, when prices for everything would go up, and shrinkflation. That's when prices stay the same, but you'd get less of a product for the same price. Say a bottle of milk. Today you buy 1 liter bottle of milk, let's say for $3. And next week you come to a store and you also pay $3, but get 900 milligram bottle instead. 10% of milk less. Shrinkflation is usually about food, but in Russia, it's also about real estate. Now, get ready for something very interesting, something that you probably haven't seen before. This is Anapa, a city in southern Russia on the coast of the Black Sea. These are new construction apartment blocks. No, these apartments aren't sold at deep discount. Prices for square foot are around $270 per square foot or $2,700 for square meter. You see the sea not too far? And look at the height of these rooms. And these guys are not giants, they're just regular tall men. I thought you might like this report. I don't know how about you, but this is the first time I see something like that. Welcome to Lewis Carroll's world, through the looking glass. Oh, sorry. Welcome to Putin's Russia, summer of 2025. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. And welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news updates straight out of the mad circus that Russia has become. But first things first. There's no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. And the news? I call them crazy news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media. Straight to the news now. And let me start with the positive news. Hey, inside Russia is a positive corner, the positive corner of internet. And the first news of the day is about patriots and patriotism, or I should say Russian patriots and Russian patriotism. True Russian patriots, Russian values, Russian world, Russia type of patriots. No fakes, no show-offs. The good, true patriots. Check this out. This is Moskva 24, Moscow 24. A Moscow-based Russian federal channel with a very large audience. Check this out. Let me translate so you understand what's going on. This is a very fast video. A reporter asks what kind of a smartphone they prefer in the studio, a Chinese one or American one, American Apple iPhone. Chinese one or Apple iPhone, American Apple. And the female host in the studio immediately fires back. Apple, And the male host quickly responds, oh, Elizaveta, the female host, is known by her unpopular position on smartphones. And him, the male host, he, prefers the Chinese smartphones. And Elizaveta, right now, the female host, asks him to show what kind of phone he is using right then in his hands. The guy moves his phone from the camera view and replies that it doesn't matter what kind of phone he's using now. Yes, he says, I have an iPhone, but I only have iPhone to show everyone how wonderful picture of Russian art I have. Let me show. Camera, pick it up, please. So this is a picture of Khakhlama Russian art on my iPhone, he says. And they move on. So he thinks, he goes, this is 1-1, Елизавета. Well, I give the girl a credit for bravery, you know. This is really funny. Let me show you again, just real quick, without translation now.
Китайские смартфоны или Apple американский?
Apple. Oh, unpopular position. I like Chinese phones. And what do you have in your hand right now? Show me. Oh, no, it doesn't matter. No. Yes, I have iPhone. Oh my God. This is too funny, you know. The young guy just showed us the true face of Russian propagandist. Smart, educated, lying, cynical, double-faced scumbag who sells regular Russian uninformed, brainwashed, uneducated people the idea that everything Western is unpatriotic. Meanwhile, he's using everything Western made himself. And this isn't just one of the hosts of the major TV channel. You can see that cynicism, fakeness, and double-facedness everywhere in the Russian propaganda and in Russian state. Oh, I love Russian-made Lada Granta very much. Do I own one? No, I own a Mercedes instead. But Russian radio is always playing in my Mercedes. And I love Russia. Russia is my home. I'm the patriot. My children? No, they're not in Russia. They're studying in London. My house? Oh, it's in Miami. But my kids always eat pancakes with black caviar from Russia. And there's a portrait of Putin hanging in my condo in Miami. So I'm a patriot after all. Next time you watch Russian state-controlled TV channels, don't ever forget who you face. Don't ever forget about what I just showed you, what you just saw. Another piece of news is about cold and loneliness. About being cold and lonely. Sergei Shoigu, former Minister of Defense of Russia, responsible for invading Ukraine, for the mobilization, for hundreds of thousands of people killed on both sides of the border in Russia and in Ukraine. For the first time, he spoke publicly. Since he was ousted, he was fired last year in May. Shoigu said that the top of the vertical of power is a very cold and very lonely place. Believe me, the higher you go up the ladder, the more lonely you feel. It's very cold and very lonely, believe me, he said. He said that in the documentary interview Shoigu 70 Rules of Life, dedicated to his 70th birthday. Basically, he proved that the career advancement in Russia comes with increasing sense of isolation. You know what? I believe he's feeling cold and lonely. And I also believe he's not the only one. Everyone who reaches the top of the pyramid called the vertical of power, that's the system that governs Russia that Vladimir Putin has built, feels exactly the same. Cold and lonely. Yes, they do have lots of power, almost unlimited power. They have plenty of money, billions and billions of dollars. That is their reward. Billions of dollars. They have many lovers, they have yachts, they have helicopters and planes and mansions, but they are alone there. And it's definitely cold and lonely. And I also think that Shoigu forgot to mention he is feeling scared. Scared of what's awaiting him in the afterlife very soon. That serves him and the rest in the vertical of power quite well. Let me just double check something. Actually, the next news is a piece of news is about security. More security to Russian people. The authorities will establish surveillance of foreigners in Moscow and Moscow province starting September 1st. The state will begin monitoring locations of visiting foreigners. The bill on conducting such an experiment was adopted by the senators of Russian parliament. Citizens of other countries arriving to the capital who travel visa-free to Russia will be required to undergo fingerprinting, biometric photographing, informing about their place of actual residence in Russia, and installing a personalized mobile application on their phones. With help of the telephone app, the federal police and the KGB will be able to track the geolocation of the foreigners. And what if a person doesn't have a smartphone? Problem, right? Not really. Solution. No worries. An ankle bracelet. According to the adopted bill, and it's not a proposition, they adopted it. It's a law now. Such requirements will not apply to minors, diplomats and their family members, as well as citizens of Belarus. They already have their own apps installed on their own phones, okay? They have their own leashes. The rest, within 3 days of arrival, will have to contact the authorities for obtaining public services in the field of migration, fingerprinting registration, and photographing. At the same time, in case of an attempt to circumvent geolocation control, that's how it's called, geolocation control, the foreigners will be included in the register of controlled persons, that such a register exists in Russia. After that, they will face deportation from the territory of Russia. So there's no way around this geolocation control. How do you like that? You're foreigners, you're not Russian, because Russians don't watch me. How do you like that? Would you like to come to Russia, be a tourist, How about an ankle bracelet? Or how about an app that the KGB installs and you have no clue what it does? That's... Wow. Welcome to Russia. Please, come visit wonderful country, No, but... That's just the surface. The real deal lies beneath the surface. They're saying it's an experiment aimed at increasing safety of Russian citizens. They're going to be controlling the foreigners who come and roam inside Russia uncontrollably. Oh my God, that's terrible. So they're going to make Russian citizens more secure, more safe. In reality, it's a testing of a system that they will use on both foreigners and Russian citizens in the future. Total control is coming. Moving on to the next piece of news about, well, the newsmaker this time is the Russian parliament. It adopted a law on the restriction of available spots in universities. Yeah, they control the students now. Until now, the Ministry of Education and Science could not regulate the number of students who pay for their own education. The state pays for education of some students, and that number they can control. But then if a person wanted to become a student, pay for himself or herself, it's kind of their business and the business of university. Not any longer. Now that's the business of the Ministry of Education and Science. The law will come into force on September 1st, 2025, but the authorities will be able to start reducing spots in certain specialties only in 2026. That's how they sugarcoat this thing a little bit. They say, well, there's a new law, but it'll start working only in 1 year. So you're free for 1 year. That will certainly lead to increase in prices for higher education. Well, obviously, shorter supply, higher demand, and higher demand, higher the prices. That's economics 101, right? Why do they do that? Due to the restrictions, the government wants to eliminate the surplus of certain experts, surplus of economists, yours truly, lawyers, and other humanitarian specialists with higher education by redirecting applicants to working specialties, where now there are shortages of such specialists. The state wants to control the commercial higher education. Like I said before, they only controlled the students who the state paid for, and now they control expense to everyone. More control, total control on everything and everybody. Now they will decide where we go to learn and what we will learn. More control. Sometimes I pinch myself because I see the news. I go through the news and I select for Friday news, crazy news update. And then the news, they come in, they look so unbelievable. And of course, I fact check them. But recently, that's all this crazy news. They're not fakes. They're just real deal, real stuff. And sometimes I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe, in some kind of strange reality. Okay, that's not our reality. Through the Looking Glass, I don't know if any of you read Lewis Carroll's book, but that's how it feels like. Everything seems not what it is. Let's move to the next piece of news of reprivatization. In other words, theft. This is a huge trend in Russia. It is happening left and right, and I'm just going to give you one example. Well, two examples. The large food corporation called Glove Produkt, established in 1995, long time ago. There was one businessman started providing product by himself, and now it's one of Russia's largest food corporations. So, Glove Produkt may come under full state control. The Moscow Arbitration Court will consider the request of the Prosecutor General's office for the seizure of all assets of the owner of Glove Produkt group of companies, Leonid Smirnov. According to the supervisory authority, The company is owned by a US citizen, Leonid Smirnov, illegally transferred 1.3 billion rubles, that's about $15 million, abroad as dividends. And following the institutions of the owner, opposed the representatives of the Federal Property Management Agency. Whatever that means, I really didn't understand. I understood the dividends, and that's the main charge. Since it is not possible to recover these dividends, these funds, from the foreign citizen who is in the foreign country, the shares of all of his companies should be converted into Russian state. Smirnov is also a Russian citizen, by the way. He's got dual citizenship, so he's got... Now, this is a perfect example of what Russian state is doing these days. The rightful owner received income from legal business activities, paid taxes, then received dividends and paid taxes on the dividends. His money. He can do anything he wants to with it. So he transfers the money to the overseas, the money that he paid the taxes on. Honestly, that's what I would do if I were him. That's perfectly legal. Still is. And if the state has a problem with that, okay, that's a potential tax issue. You don't seize all assets of all companies because of that. You can fine one or two or many companies, but you can't steal stuff. You can't steal the companies themselves. But that's where the normal logic works. And in Russia, there's Russian logic. The state comes in and takes all it wants. And if you run away before it happens, consider yourself lucky. No matter what you do, they will find an excuse to steal your business, your child, your baby. I know I had a few businesses, startups. I know how owner feels about business that he started or she started and built. You feel like it's your child somewhat, and the state comes in, barges in, and steals it from you. And that's not just one company, Glove Product. It's happening everywhere now. I am going to dedicate one of the streams about that. Another example is, I don't know if any of you played the World of Tanks. The company is called Wargaming, the developer of the World of Tanks. It's like a madly popular game. I played it, just tried it, I don't know, a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. So anyway, I don't play computer games, but I was impressed. Wargaming. And when the war started, the Wargaming was split into two companies. The Wargaming itself serving the world, and Leicester Games serving Russia. And, well, guess what? Someone on the top of Russia liked the World of Tanks because that game brings in lots of money. It's a money flow, massive money flow. And guess what? They just stole Leicester Games from the rightful owner. Yeah, they confiscated it. So, but anyway, I'm going to do a live stream, so keep on tuning in. The next couple news I'd like to talk are fines. Yeah, fines. In Russia, new fine will be imposed on the owners of unused land and on the owners who use land for purposes other than land is designated to be used for. For example, building a store or a cafe on a site designated for housing may entail a fine up to 20,000 rubles for individuals and up to 200,000 rubles for legal entities. Fines for an abandoned, unmaintained land can amount to 700,000 rubles. That's about $8,000. What is unmaintained land? Well, that's where grass is not cut. I know in America there are some subdivisions with houses, and they are united by certain rules. They're called HOA, homeowners associations, and then they set up their own rules. And so consider this: Russian state has become the HOA, super HOA, and they tell you what you can do and what you can't. And the thing is, the owners of the houses, of properties, they can get together and change the rules. But in Russia, yeah, you're right, they can't. More fines. Russian parents will be fined if their children are found on the streets without supervision after 10 p.m. or after 11 p.m. in the summertime. This is it. The ban applies to teenagers under the age of 18, applies to staying in parks, shopping malls, cafes, cinemas, stadiums, and other public spaces. Yes, if you are under 18, you cannot stay past 10 p.m. in a movie theater. Yeah, you cannot go to a cafe, you cannot go on a date. No, your parents will be found and fined. And then perhaps something else too. I don't know what, but that wouldn't surprise me. First, they do it for the teenagers, underage children. But guess what's going to happen next? That's right. I think you know the answer. One of the predictions I made in the beginning of this year is on the first day of every year, I make forecasts. Not prediction, but forecasts. I forecasted an increase in fiscal policy of Russian state, and more fines, more license, increased fines, increased license fees, increased taxes, and all of that. The Russian state is trying to put its greasy hand into the pockets of Russian citizens deeper and deeper. There's not much to take there, but it's still something, so it's right in there, and it's fiddling and trying to give me your money, fines. Very odd news that concerns the current state of agriculture in Russia. I know a lot of people ask me about what's going on with agriculture, what's going on with food. Well, listen to this. Afghanistan, among all other countries, Afghanistan, there's a province of Panjshir. It will be supplying cherries to Russia. Other cherries grown in Russia? Hell yeah! In the southern Russia, cherries and strawberries are my most favorite fruit. We didn't have anything else, but we had strawberries, raspberries, and cherries pretty much. Apricots too. And there's perhaps not enough cherries in Russia for Russians to eat. Hell no. There's so many cherries that Russian southern regions produce so much cherries that they can export cherries to Afghanistan. Probably to pile cherries in huge piles all over Afghanistan. At least until 2025 it was like that. Pre-war, when I was growing up, even in the USSR, we had cherries everywhere. In June, in late May, going almost into July. Not in 2025. I wonder, perhaps there's a shortage of men, farmers, and people in general, and there's not too many people who would harvest cherries. Well, hell yes. At least 1 million men and many farmers among those men fighting in the front lines in Ukraine, trying to kill Ukrainians or getting killed themselves instead of picking cherries. But you know what? I have lots of different news about agriculture. I'm going to do a live stream in the upcoming week to give you an update what's going on in Russian agriculture. So please stay tuned. Now, before moving to the next news, I want to take a pause to sip this wonderful English breakfast tea and tell you that yesterday in one of the comments I learned that it actually were the Dutch who brought tea into Europe, not the English. I haven't researched, but I was very surprised. But anyway, I'm drinking English tea, English breakfast, and this good company comes from England. It's called the Twinings. I'm not sponsored by Twinings. I wish I were, but I'm not. But I love their tea. English breakfast, extra strong, so cheers. And I also would like to take this opportunity to thank you. Every one of you watching right now, thank you for being inside Russia community. Thank you for sending me your prayers, your love. Thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, commenting. Thank you for buying me coffees at buymecoffee.com. Your support shows me that you value my work highly. Know that inspires me, gives me energy to move forward. I am demonetized. My channel is not bringing any money from Google, but I give you a promise that no matter what, monetized or demonetized, I will keep on going. So thank you so very much. And please forgive me for this little pause. It's really hard to speak for 1 hour straight. So most YouTubers have this time in the middle of a stream they call mid-roll. That's when they give little inserts of sponsorship, whoever sponsors their channels. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm the only sponsor of this channel. So I dedicate this time to me, to take a little break from this crazy news. And I'm done. So let's move to the next piece of news. Please also forgive me my sarcasm, because that's a coping mechanism. That's without sarcasm, I'd go nuts. I get sick all the time from stress. It's diagnosed high cortisol, high stress. So I'm trying to cope with that by inserting humor and sarcasm. So now, without sarcasm, this news would be just. The next piece of news comes from Russian senators, among all other people, right? To learn what's going on in Russia, you've got to keep your eyes open for a specific kind of news. Because on the surface, and if you look at different media, big media, on the surface you will find that everything in Russia is hunky-dory. Courtesy to Russian propaganda, of course. Courtesy of Russian propaganda. But once in a while, one official misspeaks, another person, has an event of a slip of the tongue. They say something here and there, something happens, another thing happens, and it's all fragmented. Fragmented small bits and pieces here and there. But when we combine them, they give us the big picture of truth. And the next piece of news is just that. Another small bit of information that screams volumes. The Russian parliament proposed launching a federal mortgage subsidy program for doctors, teachers, and scientists. Specific program for the specific kind of people. If this initiative passes, doctors, teachers, and scientists in Russia would be eligible for a 5% mortgage. That'd be paying annually 5%. Right now, if you go to a commercial bank, a commercial rate for mortgage is about, starts with 20, 8.29%. The interest rate, the Central Bank of Russia, by the way, just lowered the interest rate by 1 point from 21% to 20%. It's nothing, it's still extremely high. And the mortgages start at, let's say, 29 right now. And then all of a sudden, there's a program for scientists, teachers, and doctors, and they'd be able to borrow at 5%. Not bad, right? But then think that Russia doesn't have any money. It's used up all the savings account it had, and it's dry on money. And things are catastrophic. And yet, the parliament, the senators, propose such a subsidy. That subsidy is going to use taxpayers' money from the federal budget, right? Those teachers, doctors, and scientists having their salaries cut right now, they're trying to save on everything, but yet they will be offered 5% mortgage. Now, the senators also stated in the parliament in a speech that the initiative is crucial and Russian state is forced to launch this program due to the scientists emigrating from Russia in large numbers and also due to the critical shortage of doctors and teachers. And if we turn on Russian TV, we see a picture completely different, a picture perfect. Russia is circumventing the international sanctions. Russian people live great lives. Russian income, the Russians, their incomes are growing. They're swimming in money. They're eating much more expensive food these days. The Russian world is spreading all over the world. That's what you get at the Russian propaganda if you turn the TV on. And at the same time, behind the closed doors, the senators are discussing critical shortage of scientists, doctors, and teachers. I wonder why such a critical shortage. Probably because they're just living tremendously, fantastically wealthy lives, I actually might have an idea for Russian scientists. Get that subsidized 5% mortgage and buy one of those nice apartments in Anapa. How about that? Nice. Lots of volume, lots of space, high ceilings, It's really good for subsidized mortgage. So I think this news speaks volumes of what is really happening in Russia. If next time you hear some expert saying that, Russian economy is doing great, shove this piece of information into his face, okay? The next piece of news is up in the air news. Well, at least 2 foreign airlines are up in the air. They have begun negotiations on transferring some flights, quite a few flights, from Moscow airports to St. Petersburg Airport Pulkovo. And these are the Turkish Airlines and the Emirates. Well, at least they may be, as my source says. It's actually, my source is, in this case, is the information I received from Vedomosti, Russia's newspaper. It's an open source. Everyone who reads Vedomosti, knows about that. So the newspaper has sources inside both airlines and, inside both airports, Moscow and Pulkovo, St. Petersburg, and in some Russian airlines. The foreign airlines are considering this option of moving flights away from Moscow to St. Petersburg due to the restrictions imposed in Moscow on airports in connections with threat of drones that nowadays appear daily, as well as due to the growing number of passengers who fly to international destinations from Moscow but arrive there from St. Petersburg. Domodedovo Airport told RIA Novosti, and RIA Novosti spread the information everywhere, that the information about the massive flight rescheduling is not true. Now, we catch the propaganda lie again. If you look at RIA Novosti, Russia's large state propaganda news agency, foreign airlines are moving from Moscow to St. Petersburg is fake news. But daily alerts and hundreds of canceled flights, international flights from Moscow airports, Domodedovo, Zhukovsky, that's a reality. That does happen every single day. It did happen. It's happening right now. They closed down Domodedovo and they closed down Zhukovsky. And you know what? Once they close the airport down due to the threat of drones, it messes up the schedule. If any one of you works for airlines, you understand what I'm talking about. The flights get canceled, they get bumped by a few hours, and it happens every single day now. But according to RIA Novosti, everything's fine. It's fake news. And the foreign companies, we know for sure they're already working on moving to St. Petersburg. And guess what? When they finally move to St. Petersburg, it's going to be a done deal, a signed contract, and then they'll start flying from St. Petersburg. RIA Novosti will act as if it never said anything about them moving, and will just keep silence about that. I just love them catching them lying red-handed, It's becoming too easy these days. By the way, there will be so many more news like this. If you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, consider becoming Patreon of Inside Russia, because every single day I carefully select 9 news that I find important, and I post them along with my commentaries and analysis. It'll keep you informed on everything you wanted to know about Russia, but didn't know where to ask. Because where would you ask? The big media doesn't talk about things I talk about, and they don't give you the true picture of what's going on in Russia. Moreover, recently, about a week ago, I've introduced another type of content. I call it the daily snippets. Every single day, I record a video unrehearsed, unprepared, so spontaneous. I sit in front of a camera and I speak of something that I find important in that day about Russia. And it's really hard. It's usually a trend. It's not an event, but a trend. It's feeling that I have, and that's called the daily snippet, and it's been a tremendous success. People love it. So if you become patron of Inside Russia, then you will have access to everything. The next piece of news is pretty incredible. It's about stability. Yes, stability. All they want in Russia is stability. Russians love stability. Putin has given them the stability and safety. Now, the residents of Moscow will be informed about drone attacks in real life in public transport now. A special video clip already presented to the heads of the Ministry of Emergency Affairs Situations, Alexander Kurenkov, will be shown on the screens in buses and trams where such screens are installed. Yeah, this is it. But it's a regular Moscow bus. And all of a sudden it goes bum, 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 attention to everyone, threat of drone attack, emergency, follow to go to the nearest bomb shelter. Russians were promised increased safety and security when Putin gave the order to invade Ukraine. That's how he made the excuse. That's how he explained. For the sake of Russians, to improve their lives, to make their lives safer. Now, I want you to take another look again at how this increased safety and security looks like right now. The threat of drone attack, go to the nearest bomb shelter. This is Putin's safety, stability, and security. And the next piece of news continues the previous about the stability. Russians will be able to track the addresses of bomb shelters in their personal accounts at Gosuslugi. That's a state website for consolidating all official business with the state. So not only they going to be showing, it's just working out great. I mean, I was thinking if I lived in Moscow right now, right? This is just in Moscow. Okay, this is an experiment, a pilot project. So imagine that I'm riding in a bus. Well, I used to do that, not often, but yes. So it's traffic jam. I don't take the car, and a wonderful bus. And then there's no jokes. Moscow has wonderful public transportation system, state of the art. Okay, so I could even trace movement of every bus on my cell phone, smartphone. So anyway, I'm riding in a bus with my son, 8-year-old son, with my wonderful wife, with my daughters, and all of a sudden I get this. Danger of drone attack. Go to the nearest bomb shelter. And I sit and I don't panic. I just sit in the bus and I take out my cell phone and I go chuk, 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 chuk. I open Gosuslugi and I go, where is the nearest bomb shelter? And it shows right there. 600 meters. If you run now, you will make it on time before the drones come. And, bus stops, we all get out and we start running. And by the time we make it there, the drones hit. What a wonderful system. Convenient. Safe. Definitely safe. Look how the state cares for you. Unbelievable. I'm just wondering, one question. How Russian people are feeling about that? The ones who actually live in Moscow and in Russia. Well, at Moscow, at least they warn you. In the rest of Russia, they don't. How are these people who I understand less and less, although one of them, or used to be one of them, I'm confused about that, okay? How they're feeling about this whole situation. Are they feeling any safer now? I really would like to get the answer. And all right. I have a quick but important piece of news. Gasoline prices are falling all over the world due to falling oil prices, and natural gas prices are also falling all over the world. But there's one wonderful magical place where prices of natural gas and gasoline for people are rising. And that one place is called the country of through the looking glass, modern day Russia. The global prices of natural gas and oil are dropping, but the Russian consumers are paying more and more. In just 3 weeks, on July 1st, throughout Russia, all the utilities will jump in price from 15 to 20%, depending on type of the utilities. That's what I call Russian people picking up the bill. of the war. You know, I've been saying that for 3 years. If you follow my channel, I've said it many times. Russian people at the end will be picking up the bill for this incredible tragedy that they've done to Ukraine and basically to their own lives. And their lives are going to become so much more difficult, so much more miserable, and they have started picking up the bill. I'll be talking a lot more on this, on Russian economy in the upcoming days, so please keep on tuning in. The next news comes from, you gotta love it, a Z blogger. His name, Vayenkour. His name is Evgeny Goldman, or Goldman in Russian, I guess. Well, this guy right here, I showed him. I showed him to you in my 3 previous streams. You know, I showed the outrage among all Z bloggers, these quasi-patriots and all of that, about the strikes that Ukraine executed on Russia, okay? That's the guy. And I'm gonna give you much more of him today, but that just to remind you, that's how he speaks. That's him, giving address to Vladimir Putin of what happened. You gotta love this guy. So, just to remind you, okay? So, he spoke harshly, again, today, about so-called help, I guess, help, that Omsk province administration, the governor, his deputies, transferred to the front lines. The SVO, the Special Military Operation, that's what the Russians still call the war in Ukraine. So he was speaking harshly about that. The thing is, the local officials in Omsk have sent worthless junk to the front lines, which is falling apart before our eyes and only suitable for scrap metal. That's what he's saying. And this is the guy in a different message. The cars that you send to the front lines, they're junk. Don't make shame of yourself. We can't even fix them unfixable. They don't have worthless piece of junk, buckets of nuts and bolts. I know some other administrations that gave 5-6 cars every day, but take your piece of crap and eat it yourself. So anyway, the guy's, he's what do I say? He's angry. He's always angry, right? Goldman complained and complained. It's a shame to accept such equipment, to send such equipment. It costs more to repair, and it's not even repairable. Now, what is that marvelous donation he complained about? Well, I have it for you in the video. It's not the Moscow Mule, of course. Moscow Mule is, the modern car, but this is an old classic, probably proudly born in 1979 or something like that. Wonderful, wonderful car. Well, it's still going. I think it's still usable. I think it can be fixed and used for whatever reasons they use it in front lines. I mean, look. The sheet metal is still holding, going strong, and the wheels are spinning, and it can be towed. Not bad. I mean, look at this. And I have a feeling it's fast. It just looks much faster. It actually drives much faster than it looks. And these 2 boys, they brought the car, and they are very proud about that. They are representatives of the Omsk administration. And then they introduced themselves. The director of Foundation of Development of People's Initiatives. Yeah, we brought you this wonderful car, you know, to the heroes of the war, to our boys, we brought this car. This is grand. Please forgive me. All right. The videos that I show you and the news is the pieces of news that I give you here. When I select them, I try to find the ones that not just that the news that is shown or I speak about, but that it gives a bigger picture. It gives it tells the big story of what's going on in Russia, and I think this right here also speaks for. I'm sorry, I can't resist. I wanna see that myself again. The masterpiece. What have they done to this car so it's in such terrible condition? I don't even understand. Has it been standing for like 15 years, perhaps? That's not from the license plate is more than Russian. It's not from the USSR. So anyway, you see, this is the truth. It's not Western propaganda. It's out there. There's video to prove it to you. Their own people are furious at them. Okay, this Vajencourt, the guy somehow in the front lines involved in the war, he's furious. Okay, imagine what kind of theft is going inside the administrations in Russian provinces. Imagine how much money they allocate and take good cars for themselves and send to the front lines, something like that. The pieces of junk. Imagine what is the current state of the Russian armed forces, so they accept this piece of crap and actually transport it to the front lines to do what? What can they do with that? Imagine the current poor state of Russian military. And I think that picture just gave us a pretty good idea. But the next news is not actually funny. It's horrendous, in my opinion. I don't like it myself, but I feel it's important for you to know, okay? Children's Special Forces Camp for 10-year-olds has been opened in Kama province. Right here. That's the advertisement. It's got QR codes that lead to the website, and it has telephone numbers for parents, I guess, to sign up their children, 10-year-olds, to the camp. This is public information. It's not private. It's out there. You can look at it. It's advertising, okay? Children there are taught the law of God, in, I quote advertisement, hand-to-hand combat, the law of God, tactical combat, firing and tactical training, survival, and operating drones. Children are no longer shy about preparing for the new war. 10-year-olds, of course, with full consent of their parents, who not only send their children to the camp or camps like this, but are proudly make that information public by posting these pictures online and bragging about it. I'm a parent of an 8-year-old, and I have 5 children. I have 2 sons. One is 18, another one is 8, and I have 3 girls. We're pretty much adults now. Uh, I don't understand. I know that there are lots of parents and grandparents right now watching me. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of that? I personally do not understand these people. I thought I was born and raised in Russia, you know. I thought I was one of them. But they seem so alien to me with their values. How can you teach the law of God, Bible, basically, and at the same time teach your child operational combat or firing? It's, perhaps I am alien for them. Perhaps it's the country of normal people and it's just me crazy. I take that. That's possible, okay? But I don't understand them. I had a pretty bad picture in my head, you know, and I don't like that. But I wonder how they would be feeling, sobbing bitterly, you know, showing their fists to heaven in the funeral, asking, "Why my son?" I don't know what to tell you. I think that's the most horrific, horrendous news of today's report. The next two pieces of news are disturbing, very disturbing, and they show a lot where Russia is heading towards. In a meeting with Russian government, Vladimir Putin asked the government to transfer public services to the national messenger platform. Check this out. I would like to ask you this, such and such. Please pay extra attention to support the internet. You know, we need our own messenger. Number one. Number two. I'm addressing heads of all departments. You are to provide all necessary support to develop the Russian messenger. That's going to be the hub of communications. Yes. It's incredibly, extremely important. Organizations providing financial services need to be transferred to work in this messenger. This is extremely important, finished Vladimir Putin. Putin in this video was talking about the Max Messenger, the Chinese WeChat analog created by a Russian-owned company, the state-owned company VK. VK has ownership, the KGB is controlling the company. The authorities wanted to be possible to communicate there, receive public messages, public services, and use it as an identity card instead of driver's license. So, you know, it means that you have to be certified. Your telephone has to be certified within this messenger. So it's going to be more than a messenger. That's going to be an identificator. Imagine the KGB program inside your cell phone. Remember, you know, earlier I spoke to of the news about monitoring foreigners in Russia. I think that's child's play compared to what just Putin said. Okay, this is real deal. The communicator that will be providing public services and serving as an identity card. Wow, just wow. And the next piece of news is very similar. It's of phones. You know, the phones, the kind of phones that we used to call. Russians will be banned from receiving calls from abroad. How do you like that? The Ministry of Finance has sent second package of amendments to the telecom bill. That's a set of laws to Russian parliament and telecom companies, telecom operators. The changes in the legislation are aimed at minimizing telephone fraud and increasing security of Russian people, of course. Among other things, it suggests banning calls to Russia from foreign SIM cards, from foreign numbers, by default. Now, the details. According to the Forbes, the bill provides for the adjustment of 5 federal laws at once. The laws are on communications, on personal data, on information, on operational investigative activities, and on electronic signatures. The amendment to the law on communications will prohibit receiving calls from SIM cards of foreign telecom operators. Basically, from foreign companies, from outside to Russia, you won't be able to call. To remove this ban, a Russian user, telephone owner, number owner, will have to inform of his telecom company, telecom operator, that he wants to receive such calls from abroad. And at the same time, the operator will be required to label all such calls. Another innovation will oblige the operators to disable numbers that are suspected of fraud. They will be entered into a special registry, and at the request of the Ministry of Finance, recordings of conversations using these numbers will be provided. Well, will have to be provided. Interesting. What does Ministry of Finance have to do with getting recordings of conversations? The Forbes recalled that according to the Yarovaya law, that's the law that was created about over 10 years ago, all telecom operators in Russia are required to keep information about calls for 3 years and the recording of conversations of the calls themselves for 6 months. If a call from a number from this registry of banned numbers is not blocked by the operator will be forced to compensate the client for losses from a conversation with a fraudster. Wow, just wow. I have heard this music before. Oh, yes, back in the old country. Now, this music was called the Iron Curtain. Now it's called on security of communications. No calls from abroad were allowed in the USSR. And if you wanted to receive such a call, you'd have to apply to the KGB. You'd have to get permission, and of course, you would have to file all the information, who was going to call you and who you expect to call and so forth, And folks, you gotta understand, the country sucked. That system sucked. We were so oppressed. And when it fell apart in 1991, we were intoxicated with freedom. Okay? It's really it's hard for me to describe this feeling I was going through in 91, 92. Yes, it was incredibly hard. There was very little money, mafia, and, at least you could deal with mafia. They were pretty straight guys. With their own rules. Things were falling apart economically, but you know what? We had freedom, and it was like so much better than living in the USSR. And now they're doing it again, using an excuse of minimizing the risks of telephone fraud. They take away our right to decide whose calls to take and who's not to take, who to talk to and who to not talk to. That's my right. That's the right of every citizen. I can call to anyone I want to, and I can receive calls from anyone. That's up to me. I pay money for the service. That's it. But no, not any longer. Not any longer. The state decides now. First, they started banning the websites a long time ago, about 13 years ago. It was a big deal. It was a very long procedure to get a website banned. A special authority, usually investigative committee or prosecutor general or the KGB, would have to open a special case, would have to go to court and receive a court order to block the site, take that court order and give it to a special ministry. Okay? That was a very sophisticated, lengthy, and resource demanding procedure. But then they simplified it. There's no court order required now. They can simply ban it by calling the Ministry of Digitization or whatever, information. Then they cut off YouTube. They said, we're not blocking it, we're just slowing it down to the point where it's not working. Then they cut off internet. It happens right now. In more and more provinces in Russia, they cut off internet. You know what they say? Well, we have to de-internet you because of the threats of the drones. And you know what? They cut off internet, mobile internet, and the drones are still flying. Okay? They don't care about internet or not. They come from Ukraine and they still flying. Then they ban the messengers that cannot control, such as Telegram, WhatsApp, and then they require everyone to use their own messenger, the KGB bugged messenger. Then they will regulate telephone calls, so no one from outside will be able to call Russia. And then they won't be able to use Telegram and WhatsApp because everything will be banned. And do you know what the last step will be? Closing the borders. Folks, I am not darkening the colors. It's happening right now in front of our eyes. The next piece of news is, surprise, surprise, from Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president, and the guy who some say he's lost his marbles. It's really hard to disagree with them, Now, Dmitry Medvedev came out today and showed himself from a completely different angle. He actually was a good president when he was the president. He did lots of good to Russia, to Russian people. I can't say I admire him, no. But, he was good. He was good. Anyway, trust me on that. He was good president. But then something happened to him. And now, today, he comes out and he probably sobers up and he goes, oh my God, what have I been doing this last few years? I gotta get back to old myself and, I gotta get good. And so he comes out and he tries to reconcile Donald Trump and Elon Musk. No more, no less. Yeah, reconcile. Entire Russia saw the fight in Twitter between Elon Musk and Trump, where Musk accused Trump in many things, also terrible things, horrible things. And half of people are laughing and half of people are just confused, saying, what the heck was that? Okay? And not just Russia. In Uzbekistan, I was approached by a waiter at Tashkent Breakfast Club. He looked at me and he asked, can you tell me what happened yesterday? A waiter in Uzbekistan. Okay? So he knows that I sometimes speak English on the phone with my kids, and he knows I know things. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that everyone is talking about it. Everyone knows. And Dmitry Medvedev happened to be sober, I think, and he also learned about that. And then he said, well, why don't I be a mediator between these two great people, And he indeed reached out as a peacemaker and offered a hand of help to Elon Musk. And that actually made Russian national news. Check this out. Medvedev found an alternative way to reconcile Trump and Musk. Russia is ready to facilitate a reconciliation between US President Donald Trump and American billionaire Elon Musk. To this end, the former Russian president proposed alternative method. A reasonable payment, according to the politician, would be the transfer of Starlink shares. A reasonable payment. The transfer of Starlink shares would do. I don't really quite understand who that the receiver of the Starlink shares will be. Well, I think he meant Russia. And that's the price of facilitation of reconciliation. Wow. Can you imagine Elon Musk waking up today saying, what have I done? I gotta reconcile with Donald Trump. I gotta head Doge again. I gotta do all these wonderful things with a chainsaw again, you know? I've saved so much money to the American taxpayer. I gotta keep on going. So what do I do after my, this situation that happened yesterday? And he looks at Dmitry Medvedev's proposal and he goes, oh, that's okay. Okay, I might as well do that. The price seems steep, but I'll be good. I'll be good with Trump again. So he calls Dmitry Medvedev, says, "Okay, I'm ready. I will transfer you all the shares of Starlink." I wonder what Medvedev would do then with Putin. They would call Donald Trump and say, "Hey, comrade, do this and this, such and such." I'm confused here, okay? I don't believe that the US president is a Russian agent, but Dmitry Medvedev just pointed at that direction openly. Or is it me making a mistake? Well, let me know down in the comments, because I'm confused, okay? But among all the other things, I am so very glad that my country, Russia, and my former President Medvedev, who I didn't vote for, by the way, stepped up and offered such fantastic opportunity to mediate a reconciliation between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Okay, good for them. Good for them. Perhaps I made a mistake, and they're saying that Elon Musk should transfer the shares to Donald Trump. Then why would they need Russia? I mean, in the world it's called bribe. Not in Russia. In Russia it's just facilitation, making goods, But in the USA it's called bribe, a big one, and people go to prison for that. So perhaps that's what he meant. On a serious note, folks, you know what? That's a very good, interesting piece of news, because no, on a serious note, I'm confused. Okay, I'm trying to apply logic and common sense to this thing, and that leads me to Medvedev actually suggesting he has control over Trump. And if Starlink is given to Russia, then Trump will do things that Medvedev wants to do, which is kind of crazy to me. Okay, but this is how they think in Russia, the rulers, in these categories. When presidents and anyone can be bribed, and it's just the size of bribe matters, that's all, something big, it's Starlink. Something small, it's probably $1 billion, things like that. So that's how they think. I think they're so out of touch with the reality, and that's pretty unbelievable. Before moving to the last news of today, I would like to ask you a favor. Please let me know which news you liked the most. If you can, pick 3 news and let me know down below in the comments. I It's important. I like feedback. I don't respond to all messages, obviously, there are like thousands of them, but I try to read as many as possible. So it's very important. Please let me know. Perhaps you liked a particular news or disliked a particular news. Down below in the comments is a good place to let me know. Thank you. And the last piece of news, it's the headliner. Um, and every time I try to pick the most important news, perhaps most emotional news, and this one is. But I have hard time putting it into a category. I don't know how to call it. See for yourself. A new trend has emerged in Russia: cardboard coffins. People are massively buying up cheap alternative to wooden coffins for the deceased. Now, why the Russians are turning away from the traditional wooden coffins to the cardboard ones? The answer, I think, is pretty straightforward. Check this out. This is advertisement that you can see pretty much all over internet now. The price of the cheapest model, it's called Ecological Coffin Econom Light, is just 1200 rubles. And that is a little over $14. According to the sellers, these coffins can withstand a load up to 150 kilogram. Perhaps they are good for most people of most sizes, and they burn quickly during cremations. This is just the beginning. These cardboard coffins are here to stay. More and more people will use them because of their price. They're just $15 for the cheapest one. And they burn quickly during cremation. In Russian Orthodox tradition, cremation of a person is no. You gotta bury a person, and then there are certain rituals according to the Eastern Orthodox Church. Um, you just don't cremate people. You know, do you know who they cremate? I think you have a pretty good idea. And now the companies advertise something that burns quickly during cremation. I don't know what to say. I at this point, you know, never in the modern history of Russia, there was a situation where Russians would bury their loved ones in paper. I think this news answers many questions. How Russia is circumventing sanctions, how Russian military is doing successfully, victoriously in Ukraine, how Russian people have their incomes growing, how many, how few Russians are killed at the front lines. That's what they're not telling us. And questions like that. This is it. This is the answer. $15. Econom light. I think this news describes the current situation in Russia much better than any other news I have given you today. The situation is dire. It's not good. It's dire everywhere in all areas of life. The crematoriums are working day and night, 24/7, and people cannot afford to bury their loved ones, the deceased, in normal coffins. That's it, friends. I dare you again. I double dare you again. Have your politicians under control. Keep them under control. Look at us, Russians. We lost control. And we have let a gang from St. Petersburg to take over the power in Russia. And now, millions of us are forced to leave our homes and flee and live outside in exile out of Russia. Millions of us are forced, taken, stolen from our homes and thrown to the front lines, and some by deceit. Hundreds of thousands killed. And the worst part, my country is attacking its neighbor, a peaceful country, Ukraine. And people in Ukraine are losing lives for nothing. They haven't done anything to us. That's all because we, regular people, voters and taxpayers, have lost control over our country. We've given the power of our lives into the hands of gangsters. Okay? So look at us. Don't let your politicians go wild. Otherwise, you will end up just like us, burying your loved ones in paper coffins. Because you won't be able to afford proper funerals. Carthago delenda est.